everyone, you're welcome back to Unique Sweet Ladies Place once again. My name is Yinka. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing us how to make this beautiful top. This top is divided into three parts. We have the peplum, we have the bodice, and then we have the beautiful collar. So let's get started. At first, I'm going to be cutting the upper part of the blouse first. So first thing I'll do is to fold the fabric into two. Then after that, I'll fold it over into four. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure my starting point, which is my guideline. Then from my guideline, I'm going to measure my vertical measurement. First, I'm going to measure the length of my armhole. I use 9 inches for my armhole. Then I'll measure my waist length, which is 17 plus 1 inch seam allowance. I'm making use of 1 inch as my seam allowance because I want to put elastic on the waistline. So after that, I will extend the line. So the next thing is to measure standard 3 inches neck width. Then after that, I'm going to measure my shoulder measurement. My shoulder is 16 divided by 2, that is 8. I'll measure 8 inches. Then from that shoulder tip, I'm going to go down by 1 inch. Then I'm going to connect to the 3 inches neck width so that I can get my shoulder slope. So after that, I'm going to connect the shoulder to the armhole line, which is my chest line. Then I'm going to add ½ inch to my shoulder line for my seam allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do, starting from my 1 inch shoulder slope, I'm going to measure down to the chest line and then I'll locate the midpoint. At the midpoint, I'm going to come in by ½ inch. That's for the front armhole. Then I'll use the straight part of my ruler to connect it back to the shoulder tip like so. Then I'll place the curved part of my ruler to the chest line like this. Then I'm going to get the back armhole first. Then after that, I'll place it to the ½ inch that I mark inward. Then I'll connect for the front armhole curve. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to input my circumference measurement. On my chest line, I'm going to input my bust measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch seam allowance. And then on the waistline, I'm going to input my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch ease and then 1 inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to connect these points together. If you notice there's no zip allowance on these bodies, it's because of that we put this 1 inch ease so that the clothes will be able to enter into our body. That's the essence of that 1 inch ease that we added to the waist measurement. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to shape the neckline. For the neck width, I measure 5 inch. Then for the neck depth, I measure 3.5 inches. Then after that, I'm going to connect these points together with my curved part of the ruler. Then after that, I'm going to cut it out. First, you cut on the back armhole, you cut the side, then after that, you're going to remove the one inside. Just remove the inner layer, and then that will be for your back. Then you reshape the front armhole like so. Then after that, you notch the armhole like that so that you can know the one that is the front from the back. So this is it. So the next thing we are going to be doing now is to cut our peplum. So let's pay close attention. What 720-degree peplum simply means is you cutting out two circles to become one. Normally when we're cutting a peplum, you just cut out one. But when it's 720, it means you're cutting two circles to become one single piece. As you can see, the peplum is two. The circle is two. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to do, calculate the radius for your peplum, and the formula is your waist measurement plus 1 inch seam allowance, then divided by 12.56. This 1 inch seam allowance is very important. You know, I told you it's going to be into two circles, so you need to join them together to become one. So that is why you need your seam allowance. So in our own case, the waist measurement is 32. 32 plus 1 inch seam allowance, then plus 4-inch ease. You know, I added 1 inch to the waist measurement as ease. So, and the fabric is folded into 4, so that's why it's 4-inch ease. Then you divide the answer by 12.56, which give me 2.9. Then I'm going to subtract 0.5 seam allowance from that 2.9. Then it will now be 2.4. And note, if you're adding zip allowance to your own bodice, instead of adding 4-inch ease to the waist measurement, just add your zip allowance instead. For example, your waist measurement plus 1-inch seam allowance, then plus your zip allowance, whether two, depends on whatever you want to use for your zip allowance. All right, so that's it. So the next thing now is to fold my fabric. First, I'm going to fold my fabric into two. You can see this fabric is folded into two now. Then again, I'll fold it into four. Then after that, I'll just fold it downward. By the time you fold it this way, it's going to be into 8 folds. So if you're cutting 720-degree peplum, your fabric needs to be folded into 8. All right, so the first thing now is to measure my radius. My radius is 2.4, but for it to be very easy for me to rotate, I'll just make it 2.5. So starting from the tip, I'm going to rotate my 2.5 just like I'm doing here. Then I'm going to measure the remaining length of my blouse. Length of my blouse is my total blouse length minus my waist length, which is 26.5 minus 17, which give me 9.5, then plus 1.5 seam allowance, which give me 11. So the remaining length of my blouse is 11. So I'm going to measure 11 starting from the radius like so. Then after that, I'll go back to the tip like I'm showing you now, and I'll continue to rotate the answer. So at this point now is 13, so like 13.5, I'll continue to rotate the 13.5. And after that, I'll cut it out. Then I'll cut on the radius. So after that, you open it just like I'm showing you now. And then you put your scissors in between, and then you cut open this side. So if you open it up, this peplum is into two circles like I said earlier. So can you see it's into two circles? So we are going to now join it from this point that we cut it open to become one. You know, we slitted it like so. So just we're going to be joining it together to become one. So that's how to cut 720 peplum. This is a special request for one of us here. So that's it. That's how to cut 720 peplum. So the next thing now is to cut the sleeve. I believe by now we all know how to cut sleeve. So you're going to be folding your fabric into 4. as usual, so that you can cut the sleeve of the two arms together. Then after that, you measure down your cap height, then your sleeve length. Then you're going to extend the line like so. Then after that, you get your armhole curve on your cap height line, just like that. Then on your sleeve length, you're going to input your round sleeve measurements divided by 2 plus your seam allowance. Then you connect it to the cap height like so. Then after that, you cut it out. Then you notch the tip like that. So in summary, this is the total cutout. You have your front bodice, the back bodice, the peplum, and then you have the sleeve. So I'm going to be showing you how to sew it now. So the first thing is to join the shoulder of the bodice together. So match the front to the back and then you join the shoulders together. For this tutorial, I use like about 1.5 inch of this organza fabric. Actually, I bought 2, but I didn't finish it. So I used like 1.5 for this tutorial. So this is it. The next thing you want to do now is to attach the peplum. So you know we have 2 pieces of the peplum. You're going to join one to the front and then you're going to join the other one to the back, like so. If you calculate your radius very well, your peplum will match with the lower part of this half length perfectly well, without any excess, without any shortage. It's going to be exactly the same length. Can you see? Exactly the same length. So the next thing now is to open it up and then you create your elastic casing. Just turn it to the wrong side and then you flip all the seam allowance on the waistline towards the upper bodice. Then you're going to fold just like I'm showing you, like this. First fold 1/2 inch inward and then you top stitch it like so. You will do it for both the back and the front. Alright, so we're done with the elastic casing. The next thing we're going to do now is to use our bias to finish the lower part of the peplum. So first you sew the bias on the right side of the fabric. Then after that you turn it to the wrong side and top stitch. So the next thing now is to measure the neckline so that we can cut out the collar. You can start from one shoulder joining, then you measure it all around till you get back to your starting point. Just measure the neckline all around like so. So I got 31 after measuring mine. So the next thing you want to do now is to cut out the collar. First fold your fabric diagonally like I'm showing you here, like a triangle. Then you just make a point like so to have a starting point for your measurements. Then starting from that your point, you're going to measure that your 31 inch plus 1 inch allowance. So now I measure 32. Then I'll roll it upward like so. So the next thing now is to measure the width of your collar. For mine, I use 1.7. So depends on what you want, how high you want it. So I want mine to be 1.5 inch high. So that quarter there is now for the seam allowance. So I measure 1.7 so that at the end of the day after sewing I'll have 1.5 inch height for the collar. So after measuring the 1.7 all around like so, I'll roll it into a straight line. So after that, I'm going to cut it out. The reason why you need to fold this diagonally is for it to relax very well on your neckline. If you cut it straight, you will not like the effect. So this is it now. So I'm going to be attaching the Ankara fabric at the edge of the sleeve as well. So I fold my fabric into 4 again. Then the length of this strip is going to be my round sleeve measurement plus my seam allowance. And the length on fold is 1.7 as well, because I want it to be the same width with the collar at the end of the day. Can you see? It's the same length with the round sleeve measurement. And upward like so is 1.7, and it's on fold. I folded it into 2. Can you see? It's folded into 2. So the next thing you want to cut now is your belt. And the length of your belt, at least it should be twice your waist circumference measurement in length. And the width on fold could be as wide as you want it, but I made mine to be 2.2 inch wide on fold. So that after sewing, I'll have 2 inches width. And the length, like I said, is twice my waist measurement. So now we are going to be sewing our collar. The first thing is to open it up, like I'm showing you now. Then you close the edge together, like so. Then after that, you can trim off the excess like that. Then you fold it back into place like it was initially. So this is it. So the next thing now is to attach it to the neckline. You match the joining with one shoulder seam on the right side, and then you sew it all around the neckline. So when you sew it to a point where it's no longer going on smoothly like it should, you remove it from under your foot and then you reposition it, so that it can be easy for you to sew. Just remove it from under your footer and then you reposition it very well. Just look at what I'm doing. And you do it in the same way. Can you see? So you reposition it like so, and then you continue sewing it all around the neckline. Till you get back to your starting point. Like I used to tell you, if you measure everything correctly, everything will be perfect. There will be no excess and there will be no shortage. So we are done attaching the collar. So the next thing you want to do now is to use a bias strip to conceal the raw edge. So just fold the collar downward like so. Then you take your bias strip and then you place it around the neckline again. So the collar will be in between the fabric and the bias strip. Then you sew the bias all around the neckline. Can you see the way it is? The essence of the bias is just to conceal the raw edge of the neckline so that everything can be nice and neat. So just sew the bias around the neckline like that. So when you're done attaching the bias to the neckline, the next thing you want to do is just to top stitch the bias to the body of the top. So flip your bias downward and top stitch it to the body of the top like so. Done with the collar, the next thing is to attach the band to the sleeve. So you open it up, you sew the band to the hem of the sleeve like so with 1/4 inch. Then after that you fold it over and then you top stitch it on top of it on the right side. Folding about 1/4 inch inward like that. So when you're done with one sleeve, you repeat the same thing to the second sleeve. And when you're done preparing your sleeve, the next thing is to attach it to the body of the top. So you match your notching on the center of the sleeve to the shoulder joining and then you sew to the right. Then when you're done, you turn it to the other side and sew it to the left. So after that, the next thing you're going to be doing now is to attach your elastic to the elastic casing on the waistline. So I'm going to be using this tiny elastic. You can use any elastic of your choice, but it shouldn't be more than 1/2 inch elastic because of the size of the casing that we have. So I'm going to attach the elastic to the waistline now. So after putting the elastic inside the casing, you are going to stitch it down so that it will not escape inside. Then when you're done with the front, you put elastic at the back as well. So the next thing now is to close the side of your top. And you're going to be closing it with 1 inch seam allowance. If you remember, we added 1 inch seam allowance to it. So you close the side with 1 inch seam allowance. And that's it. The top is ready. So the next thing you want to do now is to sew your belt. Actually, belt is optional for this style, but it just add a new look to the entire top. So I think you should go for belt as well. So when you're done sewing the belt, the next thing you want to do is just to use your scissors or anything you have to push it to the right side. When you're done pushing it to the right side, you are going to push the raw edges in just the way I'm showing you now, and then you sew the mouth closed.